following is a presentation of KSL Sports. Hello, Cougar Nation.
Handoff middle. First down. Touchdown! And listen to the Cougar Nation.
Every Monday night, we break down the Cougars' last game and look ahead to next week. Cougar Nation, brought to you by Central Bank. Here's BYU insider Mitch Harper and Matt Baiamonte on Utah's legacy home of the Cougars, KSL News Radio.
Cougar Nation, what is up? Welcome in to I always love doing these shows. After a win, 41-13, BYU 1-0 on the year. We found out who the starting quarterback was. I think we got some questions answered, Mitch. It was a good debut for BYU.
It was a great debut for BYU football in 2024 as the Cougars take down Southern Illinois 41-13 last Saturday in Provo. We are ready to take your phone calls, Cougar Nation. The question tonight, because this show, of course, is for you. Typically, we're on Monday night, 6 to 7, but because of the holiday, we're on this Tuesday evening with you. And the question is, after Jake Retzlaff's performance of 348 passing yards, has that changed your opinion of him? Sound off, 801-575-8255. Producer Nate Slack is ready to take your phone calls, and you can ask us anything or share your takes about anything in the world of BYU football. Coming up later this hour, we'll also be joined live at practice by BYU wide receiver Chase Roberts. We're expecting a call from him on the phone line on Cougar Nation. So, loaded hour coming up for you talking BYU football.
Let's start things off like we always do with our takeaways from the big win.
Cougar Nation, takeaways. Mitch and Matt analyze BYU's last week of play and what it means for the next week.
I'll start things off, Mitch, and I'll answer the question while I'm at it. The performance of Jake Retzlaff was certainly a takeaway. He throws for nearly 350 yards. Should have thrown for more if there weren't a couple of easy drops in that first half, by the way. I saw some nitpicking on social media about accuracy this, and I'm like, if his receivers catch his balls, dude's at 70% completion and throws for almost 400 yards. I don't know what there's to nitpick, but I thought Retzlaff showed big improvement in the win. His ability to layer the ball, in particular, the touch on some of his intermediate to deep passes was outstanding. That touchdown to JoJo Phillips, immaculate. But there were other throws throughout the game, too, that I thought were really high-level throws. His first completion to Chase Roberts, that was the same throw that he threw in a pick against Iowa State, and that was a mistake. And then to see that in the opener here, where it was right over the linebacker in front of the safety, perfectly thrown to Chase Roberts, I thought from a passing perspective, he looked a lot better, and that's a good sign going forward because I said this last week, and I still believe it. If BYU is going to be good this year and going forward, they have to be good at the quarterback, and they have to be good in the passing game, and they were maybe the best they've been in the passing game in the past 2 years. They looked really good.
No games last year did BYU exceed 400 total yards. When I put out that stat on X, people were saying, that can't be true. No, really, that was true. That's how bad the offense was last season. Game 1 of 2024, they go for 527 total yards. And yes, Jake Retzlaff was really good, 20 of 30 for 348. My takeaway number one, just a great start to the season because it creates confidence for this team. I think anyone listening out there realizes that there's still a long way to go, and this team has to prove itself with a difficult schedule, and the opposition is going to be far more difficult than Southern Illinois, but you destroyed that team like they are the far inferior team. There were so many times last year where BYU just did not handle business against a far inferior squad. So I think just getting that from BYU, I think was a great takeaway coming out of week 1.
I definitely agree with that, Mitch. You compare this opener to last year's opener, it's night and day different. Sam Houston maybe was a little better than Southern Illinois, but Sam Houston still threw 3 interceptions and you only put up 14 points. So I think there is definite improvement shown. It brings me to my next takeaway. Third down was not bad. I would have liked maybe one more conversion, but you go 7 of 15. That was a problem at times last year, Mitch. Third down conversions. For them to be nearly 50% on third down, that is something that can translate when the opponent gets more difficult. If you're converting on third down and keeping drives alive, you're going to be able to win more games.
Takeaway number 2 for me was Jacob Robinson. He is one of the best cornerbacks in the Big 12, and this was him breaking down his pick that he had against Southern Illinois.
We're in man, single receiver. They throw a lot of, if you're pressed up, they'll throw usually a boundary fade. So he came off wide and tried to do a little stutter and go. I just didn't bite on it. He was already so close to the sideline. And then, I just turned and looked for the ball, and it was there.
Jacob Robinson is underrated in the Big 12 Conference, but I'm telling you, folks, he's one of the best cornerbacks in the Big 12. First team's typically about 4 cornerbacks. I would not be surprised if we see at season's end Jacob Robinson be a first-team cornerback. He gets no accolades and no praise from the outside, but, man, he is just so good, and he is a playmaker. And let's get out to the phone line and welcome in our first call of the evening. I know if this is the person I think it is, the Hans, is it Hans Olsen on the BYU Sports Network and KSL Sports Zone?
Well, there's another Hans Olsen in Utah, and he is a mechanic. And he did get a lot of my mail. He actually called, and this goes all the way back to when I was being recruited. He started getting letters from Nebraska, and he thought he was getting recruited by Nebraska. He was pretty excited about it. But I actually bumped into him. He's like, man, I've gone through all kinds of stuff. I was recruited by Nebraska. I remember committing to BYU. I remember getting the first notification of my NFLPA note that I was up for some type of benefits. I'm like, yeah, no. So there's another one, but this is the one that played at BYU.
Well, Hans, welcome on in, and appreciate you calling in. Of course, Hans Olsen on the BYU Sports Network radio broadcast with Greg Wrubell and Hans and Scotty G on the KSL Sports Zone, noon to 3 every day. How are you feeling about this BYU football team after week 1, Hans?
I'm feeling really good. And by the way, you and Matt do a great job. And when I have an opportunity, I like to click on a Tuesday and just get some of your thoughts. I know the work you guys put into this. And I hope that your listeners understand the work that you put in and the passion that you guys have. It's incredible work, and you guys are out of practices, and you know these players, and it's awesome. So love to get the insights from you, and I hope your listeners realize how lucky they are to have you. But I've got high hopes for this team, and I really tried to tamper all my hopes and expectations. I almost got to the point where I was pushing myself into negativity just so I don't get my heart broke. and I'm still keeping a very realistic boundary. I'm not letting myself completely fall into the trap of, well, this team has one FCS win and it's all over. It's 11-0 from here. I'm very realistic. But I saw things that I loved. You guys talked about Jake Retzloff in his passing and some of the accuracies. They're going to need to really protect the pocket because some of the deep balls, he connected on a lot of deep balls. Those take a minute to form. And I was doing some film review, and we're talking 2.5 to 3 counts. So those 2.5 to 3 counts are going to lead to pressures, big hits, and sacks. So you got to be really careful on those deep balls and make sure when you start to see a pass rush, you're getting that ball out of your hand. I also want to point out that it's the most vanilla offense that I've watched probably in the time that I've watched BYU play FCS teams. I was watching every one of the pass protections that was called was base and simplified. There was nothing real extreme. The running backs were fantastic in pocket protection, as good as I've seen, and I hyped and pumped them up. I thought that Harvey Unga did a fantastic job coaching them and getting them where they're supposed to be. But Jake Retzloff passing aside, one thing I want to see really improve is his mesh point in handoffs and RPOs. He just needs to be a little bit more decisive. He drug a little bit too much. I don't know if it was Hinckley Rapati or if it was L.J. Martin down in the red zone where they bound each other up at the mesh